Calvin Cambridge, a young boy, is aboard a Chesterfield Group home orphanage with two of his best friends, Murph and Reg, all three of whom enjoy basketball. And the field is right in front of the orphanage. When they were playing basketball amongst themselves one morning, a group of teenagers led by Ox stopped them. He objects to a match for Calvin's fantasy jersey. His friends persuaded him, and the little boy, on the other hand, agreed to play without hesitation. Because he was tall, Ox won the game and took the jersey on the spur of the moment. Furthermore, the other teenagers mocked him at the same time. Ox wore the jersey and ripped it off. Suddenly, their guardian, Stan Biddle, appeared in front of them, turned off the TV, and asked them to sell candy to make a living. That night, they attend the Los Angeles Knights home game and encase candies outside the battlefield. At the game's conclusion, Calvin noticed Coach Wagner getting into a car to leave in the middle of the night. He then went to the coach, where he was paid $20 to sell candy. Calvin, on the other hand, refuses to accept it because he is unsure whether the money collected is truly donated to charity. Surprised by his candor, the coach asked him to purchase 4 tickets for the next game. Furthermore, Calvin was overjoyed to hear this and went to inform Morph that the following day, several couples came to the orphanage to adopt. Calvin believes he may be adopted by a couple today. However, Ox informs them that they prefer puppies over dogs. And Calvin was heartbroken. The next day, Sister Teresa brought them some old clothes and a jacket to Morph. A pair of shoes had fallen to the ground. Calvin put them on and inquired as to where she obtained them. She also stated that it might belong to a basketball player, but he had no idea who. He noticed Mijay written on the shoe and assumed it was Michael Jordan. Then, Ox heard this from the side and began fighting over the pair of shoes, in which case, the shoes collided with the rock and hung on the wire while they slept. It suddenly rains and thunders. So Calvin and his friends climb a tree to retrieve the pair of shoes, and he is successful. He notices the shoes are charged with a wired force, but doesn't give it much thought. The next day, they receive the 4 tickets that the coach had promised Ox and his group of friends, and Calvin offers one of the tickets to keep him from causing trouble. They then watch the game between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Minnesota Timberwolves. During halftime, Tracy Reynolds, the Knights star player, and one of the coaches perform a halftime show designed to entice more audience members to the battlefield. One person from the gallery will be chosen to meet with Tracy one-on-one. Luckily, Calvin's ticket number is chosen for the competition. The youngster has arrived on the battlefield and is facing Tracy. Because Calvin is a child, the man is unconcerned about the face-off. Tracy allows him to score the first round in order to engage the audience more. As a result, Calvin wins the competition despite Tracy's best efforts. The stunned audience applauds, while the star player is humiliated. The next day, 2 Knights coaches go to Bitterman and ask him to let Calvin play for them for a day. The middleman was initially hesitant. He agreed, however, after being offered a large sum of money. Calvin's friends are overjoyed for him. Ox, on the other hand, is enraged. The enchanted shoes. They make the decision to keep it a secret, but Ox can hear them talking. The next day, he goes to night camp where the other players make fun of Tracy, so Calvin tells Trace not to be concerned. The coach then brings the little boy new clothes and shoes, but he expresses his dissatisfaction with the new shoes. Then, he goes to the coach, who reveals everything to him and tells him why he was brought here. The match began almost immediately. The Knight team struggled in the first half, but Calvin was allowed to play in the second half. Unfortunately, Calvin left his magical shoes in the dressing room, and the shoe-wearing Knights won the game thanks to Calvin's strong performance. Following the match, he signs a contract to play for the rest of the tournament with the team. He arrives at the orphanage, and Bitterman pretends to be his financial guardian. Tracy and Calvin are assigned to the same room on the flight by the coach. Calvin agrees to share a room with his idol, but Tracy is not prepared. They have a curfew at night, so he gets ready for a date and leaves the room after teaching Calvin how to use room service. When Tracy returns with his date, the kid is free to eat wherever he wants and at his leisure. The room is littered with half-finished meals. He had planned for her to spend the night with her partner, but they end up taking care of Calvin, who is ill. Even though the boys go to bed late, Trace has trouble sleeping due to Calvin's snoring. They have a crucial match the next day. Tracy, on the other hand, is exhausted. When the coach questions Calvin, the matter appears strange to him. The little boy was telling the truth. The coach then threatens Tracy with suspension if he violates curfew again. Calvin has won every match he has played for the team with such efficiency that players from other teams have been impressed. Calvin is able to attend several press conferences and earn a lot of money as a result. He purchased numerous items for the orphanage. Calvin is telling Murph about his new adventure one night. When jealous Socks hears them, he attacks Calvin, attempting to take his shoes. At that point, Little Man entered the room, put an end to their squabbling, and told Oaks not to annoy Calvin because he makes so much money off of it. The next day, the team is in a hotel, and Calvin is playing a video game with Tracy before going to the pharmacy to buy sleeping pills and allergy medications to ensure a good night's sleep before the match the next day. On their journey, Calvin joins him for the ride, much to Tracy's chagrin. Tracy's parents are inquired about by the young boy. Trace was already known to the child as his father. He also refuses to speak to Tracy, claims he doesn't want to talk about his family, and continues to drive. He doesn't pay attention when the cashier hands him the pills and instead takes a sleeping pill instead of an allergy medication, which causes the man to fall asleep before starting the car and returning to the hotel. Calvin was well aware that if he violated the curfew, Tracy would be suspended. He drove the car and delivered it to the hotel after hitting several obstacles along the way. Calvin is suspended the next day for going on a joyride. Tracy is disappointed that the child was punished for his error. Tracy comes next. "Thank you for putting up with the heat to save him, Calvin." Tracy has grown fond of the boy after spending time with him. Calvin's return to the orphanage. Many couples came to adopt him, making him even more envious. Little Man did not want to be duped. As a result, he almost invites the worst parents and arranges a meeting with them. Calvin does not choose any of the couples he meets and instead decides to stay at the orphanage. That weekend, he goes to Tracy's house to meet her, uncirculated. Tracy, in such a mansion, hypnotized the little boy because he had never been in such a large house before. Calvin began by explaining why he came here. Murph is also agitated. Furthermore, he does not have good parents. Furthermore, he has a geometry exam tomorrow in which he must solve the lad's problems. While they wait, Tracy requests that he invite Murph over. He teaches him geometry in a fun way so he doesn't get bored. I'm right in the middle of it. They begin to playfully throw paint at each other. Murph eventually joined them. Calvin and his friends are discussing how difficult it is to find good parents the next day when Calvin tells them about Tracy and his father's relationship. Murph and Reg suggest that he assist them in bringing them together. Calvin meets Tracy's father the next day and drives him to Tracy's mansion. The player is extremely hostile toward Calvin, invading his privacy. Due to their demoralization, they engage in a lengthy debate about the phenomenon. They lost the match against a tough opponent, and the coach was a tyrant. They only have one more match to decide whether or not to enter the playoffs. Bitterman makes Calvin wear new shoes, telling him that if he looks presentable, they will be more likely to adopt him. Before leaving the house, Calvin gives Morph his shoes. Morph puts on the shoes and attempts to play like Calvin, but he falls short. He blames it on the shoes that have grown on his feet. And he only talks about his mother's picture. Suddenly, Fox and his friends began bugging him about the shoe. Bitterman destroyed Murph's photo of his mother. Bitterman then gathers his friends and bets $100,000 against the Knights in the next game because he has hidden the lucky shoe. Calvin, he is certain, will be terrible in the game. Calvin goes out to dinner with his adoptive parents, who are out of place. Tracy, on the other hand, sees his father for the first time 20 minutes before the game. Murph calls Calvin and informs him of the shoes. Calvin returns to the orphanage to retrieve them. The kids help him tie up Bitterman and inquire about the shoes. Ox opposes Calvin's group and attempts to help Bitterman. However, he reconsiders after the bad man insults him as usual. Ox retrieves the shoes from the safe and returns them to Calvin. Bitterman managed to free himself from the trap and immediately told his partner to stop Calvin. The man did, in fact, complete his task. However, as he went to retrieve the pair of shoes, one of Calvin's group retrieved the pair of shoes at the speed of wind. As a last resort, Bitterman stands in front of Calvin, preventing him from going any further. But the kid hits him with his scooter and finally makes it to the game by charging at him. His team is far behind schedule. When he begins to play, they quickly catch up to the opponent's score. However, in the middle of the game, he is tackled and his shoes are ruined. Calvin believes that his magic is contained within the shoes, and he would be unable to score without them. Tracy inspires the youngster by telling him that the shoes only reinforced his belief that true talent lies within himself. Calvin eventually returns to the game and assists his team in winning. Calvin returns to the orphanage, which has changed dramatically since Bill Mann's departure. Tracy informs Calvin of his intention to adopt a child and asks him if he wants to be his son. Calvin agrees on the condition that Murph accompany him. Reg, their friend, has also been adopted by a happy family. Finally, Calvin and Murph were ecstatic as they playfully fought with Tracy in their new room. That is the main point of the video. I believe you will enjoy it. The conclusion. Thank you for taking the time to watch. To receive new movie recaps, please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon.